We're here to talk about the togetherness practice. We've got about 30 minutes just to have some conversation, learn about, what is it? How did this work come about? And also maybe people that join the call might have questions about it as well. We'll just kind of go from there. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Let's jump in.
Great. Okay, so first, do you want to start with how you became involved with the togetherness practice and just give a brief kind of history of the origins and beginnings of this work?
Yeah, so happy to. So, for the longest time in my life, I've had this secret obsession slash passion. And what that was is just this desire to find the Alcohol Anonymous version for human transformation. So, how do you take human transformation from books and personalities, but to make principles that the human soul can unfold into living into its highest potential? So it just so happened over during COVID, we just got some resources and a team together, and we said, okay, if we need to find that, we need to first talk to people who are living a life of their highest potential and try to find patterns from their life, from the formation experiences that allowed them to contribute at that level of meaning, purpose, and belonging. So over 2.5 years, we spoke to 170 change makers from around the world. We spoke to business entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, young change makers, spiritual change makers, people who are moving the needle on education reform. But what we were looking for or sensing into was what was that quality of being that they embodied, which enabled them to do profound transformational work in the world without getting into exhaustion and without getting into burnout. So that was also interesting. So, right, it's not about people who are just like working, working, working. And there are lots of people in the world who is doing that, but they're also exhausted and burnt out. We wanted to find out what was the balance between the human being and the human doing. And people who have figured out that along with doing transformational work in the world. And much to our surprise, what came out of that is what we now call the togetherness practice, which in its nutshell or the essence of it, what it is, it's a framework and it is a practice tool to enable change makers or people who wants to be change makers to unlock the potential of the people around themselves and the people around in their lives. And what the togetherness practice and the research said was there were three dimensions of change. The change within ourselves. So what are the capacities, the inner capacities one needs to cultivate within oneself to thrive in times of rapid change? That's great. Then the second dimension of that change was what are the cultural conditions in your home, in your organization, in your church, in your school, in your university department? How do you create conditions that enable everyone to discover their change maker potential? So that's thing. But that was good, right? So inner and outer, that's nothing new. But what really broke it open for us was the recognition that change doesn't just happen inside a human being. Change doesn't just happen in the systems out there. Where transformational change happens is in the relational spaces between us. Right. So between the inner and the outer, there is what we call the domain of togetherness, what we are calling the relational field between humans. And that is the togetherness practice, is to say, how do you create relational fields between human beings, relational fields that are anchored in trust, belonging, love, friendship, connection, from which inner and outer change is made possible. I'll
Yeah.
pause there for now.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great background. I see we do have a few people in the call with us. Hi, Mohammed, Michael, and Joyce. I'm not sure if some others joined as well, but okay. So I'm thinking that most of the people that are on the call are a little bit familiar with this domain and area. Can you share some examples of what this work looks like on the ground and how you're engaging with it with your team?
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, it will be easier for you to track this if you go into the togethernesspractice.org website. We tried to do that on Substack when apparently we can't, or at least we haven't figured out how to share something while we are talking about it. So the way it works is we have designed the togetherness practice as when any group of human beings come together, before you talk about the work in the world, how do you first think about the conditions in which you can have that conversation, right? So how do you create the relational field of togetherness? So what we also recognize that relationships are hard for people because vulnerability is hard, right? We are living in a cultural waters where might is right? So vulnerability, tenderness, love, belonging, trust, connection, joy, friendship, the quality, all those qualities of being, which is so essential to the human being experience on planet Earth. We live in a society those that is not necessarily valued a lot. So what we have done is we have built 90 seconds, 90 minutes, 90 hours, 90 days, and 90 years of practices. Because we will always be in relationships till the day we die. And we have made that intentional, the 90, 90, 90, 90, because if you are someone who are good at relationships and who find it easier to go into that place of depth, connection, and belonging, go deeper, deep dive 90-hour practice. But if you are just new to this, but you want to access these qualities, you can start with a 90-second practice. So that's how that was the relation, the way of how it has been built. The way we are playing with it right now is based on content. For example, we are working with spiritual pastors on using the togetherness practice to reimagine masculinity for the 21st century, right? What does it even mean to be a man? And how do you help men create containers of meaning, brotherhood among in the localities they live in? So that's one dimension. We are using that as a leadership development tool. So we had a YMCA in North Carolina who came in and said, here are 20 people who are the potential CEOs and CEOs of our Y 5-6 years into the future, but we want to build their leadership potential. So we use the togetherness practice over 3 retreats over 6 months to not just build their own individual leadership potential, but build that mycelium of trust and connection between them, because we know that the leadership of the future is a relational game. It's not just this one big individual who has all the answers. We are working with foundations and organizations to use the togetherness practice to say, if there is burnout and exhaustion and a lack of clarity in your team, how do you create this culture inside your organization? This is a relational field where people can thrive and be human with each other. So those are examples. But my favorite one story, which I would say is a mother. So we have a practice in the togetherness practice about how to get unstuck. So if you with your daughter, with your partner, you feel stuck in your relationship with another someone, it's a practice which you can go do right now. It's under the 90-minute section. And one mother, a dear friend of mine, she did this with her 20-year-old daughter who was struggling with a sense of identity in her life in her 20s. And so they did the how am I stuck exercise. It takes 30 minutes to do it with two people. But at the end of the 30 minutes, she said, we just had the best conversation we've had in the last 7 years.
Wow.
That for me is the point of this, right? How do you unlock the potential of the human relational field? So I'll pause there for now.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those examples that are so rich. I wonder if anyone on the call has a question. You're welcome to share it. Vipin and I are both new to the live Substack. I've only done one before with Mohammed, but I do believe if someone here on the call had a comment or question, you can pop it in and we'll embed it into the conversation. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments that you, with this pause, that are coming up for you, Vipin, before I ask another question that I had thought about.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't have a question, but it's more of an exploration, which is to say, you know, it's really hard to for a lot of people to imagine the potential of human relationships in our country today, where there is so much polarization, there is so much mistrust. But I think that exactly is the reason why we talk about togetherness, right? The opposite of polarization is togetherness, right? The democracy is an exercise in togetherness. But what we are experiencing right now is what happens to humans and systems when there is a breakdown in togetherness, right? So creating relational fields that are anchored in trust, connection, and belonging. That's what makes human life human, right? The thing which distinguishes us from AI is our capacity to deeply feel, to deeply belong to ideas and people beyond us, but that includes us. So that's something which I keep reflecting on.
Yeah, well, you kind of then just answered one of my questions, which was, what are you learning as you engage in this framework,
Yeah.
these exercises with different groups of people?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's funny. Like I was just asking someone this morning to send me their experience with the togetherness practice because I was working on creating a scope of work for another organization. And I was just deeply touched by what someone says. So I'll just read it out to you. So this is Tamise. She's a CEO of an organization called Subculture. And she said, this is what she said: the togetherness practice changed my entire world. And I don't say that lightly. What I witnessed Vipin do with a large group of relative strangers in such a short amount of time is something that cannot be quantified, only experienced. Through this practice, a depth of friendship and trust emerged that I rarely see in most spaces. People who began as strangers are now dear, dear friends, united by a shared passion for the healing of society and the wellness of its inhabitants. Togetherness practice will heal the world. And that really touched me because when we were building this, we didn't build this for healing the world. That was not it. We wanted to unlock human potential. But what I was as I was reflecting on it, I realized you cannot talk about human potential if you do not talk about the parts in ourselves um, that is wounded, that is healed, and that we project onto the other people around us, right? So it's just that recognition that in the absence of togetherness, it's just easier to push people away. And what I'm beginning to see is that it's not something which we do, it's who we are. So think about those moments when you are in a really good conversation with a friend and you feel refreshed. There is a relational field between you,
yeah.
right? As John O'Donohue would say, there is a bless the space between us.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much more I can say here too with what you just shared, Vipin, but I'm noticing Michael has posted some questions. I don't know if you're able to see these as well, Vipin. Are you? Or otherwise, I can read them.
Yeah,
See Michael Mascolo's comments?
I think you said, I only see you are thinking the question is too long. What's the matter with you? And a smiley face. Is that what you see?
Let's see. But before that, he writes, relational field is a lovely notion. How would you define it? How
Mhm.
might it be similar to different from the concept of intersubjectivity, which I would define as coordination, sharing, and mutual incorporation of experience?
I mean, intersubjectivity seems like a beautiful notion. I think it is pointing to the territory, but I think that this relational, for me, the relational field, it's so pure because it is so simple. It is just the capacity beyond all our concepts. It's just the capacity to turn to another human being. Slow your breath down and attune to the presence and the mystery of another human soul. You can do that looking into that each other's eyes in silence. You can do that by bringing in a question and saying, "Tell me something which you're struggling with right now." So it's experiential. It's not talking about having the ice cream, it is about eating the ice cream, right? So it's not talking about intersubjectivity or the sacred, the divine. It is helping and being with each other with a quality of attunement and awareness and presence and truthfulness that unlocks the shared potential of this contact, this connection. For example, Melissa, you and I. It's simple, it's pure, it is elegant, right? And what the other thing which I would say, there is a rhythm here. So some people will say, oh, that's too California hippie-ish, right? I can't do that. Or someone who's a type A personality who says, I find it uncomfortable to slow down because inherent in that is it's an act of intimacy. It's an act of into me you see, and people feel uncomfortable in that place. But for those people, what we have said is that what the research said was there is a rhythm in the relational field. So what the research said was there were four dimensions of action or presence, not action, presence. One is when you get together as a team or in a group of humans, first to pause, to slow down, to take a breath, share a piece of poetry, share a quote that inspires you, reset the nervous system. Second, to find patterning. So pausing, patterning. Patterning is to say there is something that is not in sync in our relational field, to bring curiosity into it, Melissa, or not, and not judgment. So instead of pushing you away, which is judgment, to draw you closer and saying, I feel we haven't been as rich of friends as we have in the last 6 months. What's really going on? Bringing curiosity. That's the second step, which is patterning. The third step, once you finish pausing and patterning, is to bring trusting and truthfulness to it. So, truthfulness is the capacity to say, can I bring my whole heart and be willing to receive your whole heart and talk about what's in the way? As a Buddhist would say, what's in the way is the way, right? So, pausing, patterning, trusting or truthfulness, and finally enacting, which is to say, after this contact we've had, what is what is ready to be expressed through us. So that's the rhythm of the relational field. I'm not yet sure how that connects with the intersubjectivity dimension, but that's the flavor of this we are talking about.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for responding to Michael's question. Thank you, Michael. Let's see. Shared potential, he said that's really good. I think that in so many programs that seek to bring people together, it's unilateral. I listen to you, you listen to me. But to find shared potential is something beyond that that's powerful. Okay. Well, I'm tracking the time. We've got about 9 more minutes together. I'm wondering if there's another dimension of this you are eager to share or explore, or if you have
Yeah,
um
I would just invite people to play with it because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's a different thing to experience it. One thing that surprised us was there were these 12 capacities that came through the research, four inner capacities, four cultural conditions, and then the four ways of being of the togetherness practice. So when we put that on a piece of paper, all those 12 really beautifully aligned with the four intelligences of being human: the intelligence of the mind, the intelligence of the heart, the intelligence of the spirit, the intelligence of the body. So it's a whole person approach. We are not just talking about the heart here, talking about a whole human being. But a spiritual pastor once looked at it and he said, the inner relational and outer dimensions of the togetherness practice, he said, oh, this looks like the three faces of God: the sacred within us, the sacred between us, and the sacred around us. And I think as a society, we, as the Buddhists would say, meditate and find the God within. All the systems change theory and all that stuff would say, let's go find God in nature or changing systems, whatever. But I think one of the reasons we are struggling as a species is because we have forgotten the second phase of God, which is the God between us. That if I can sit here and look at you and recognize beyond your personality, gender, all that stuff, there is a soul which is the same as the soul within me, and we can attune to each other from that level, then, you know, it's a mirror, right? As Ramdas would say, we are all walking each other home. And that in that journey, we get to express and manifest our unique potential, which I believe is spirit's potential.
yeah. Yeah. Wow, it sounds like really rewarding work. I imagine that you enjoy facilitating in this way and engaging with groups of people that it at like opens new territories up in yourself even that
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm spot on because there's a Sufi saying which says, "You teach what you need to learn." So everything I've done in my life, in hindsight, I've realized, oh, I wanted to learn that too. So this time around, I went on the offensive. So last year, I took a sabbatical from work and I made a list of people in my life who I had an absence of togetherness with. And then I was said, how can I practice the very thing which I'm teaching? So I brought curiosity and not judgments. And much to my surprise, the first two names on that list was, my parents. And I'm a very responsible son, but I've never been able to explore when people say, I love my parents, I don't get it. Like, I like them, but I don't love them. It was confusing. So I spent the 6 months of my life to say, how may I humble myself that we can heal the patterns of 45 years of being in this constellation of father, son, mother, son relationship. And I'm delighted to say there is so much more laughter and ease in my relationship with my parents than I've ever had in the 45 years I've been their son. And that for me is critical here is it's the authenticity piece of it.
yeah
Right, which I feel the educational sector and the nonprofit sector is suffering as an absence of authenticity. We want to change someone else, but we are not necessarily always willing to change ourselves. But the togetherness practice says it's both and.
yeah that both and perspective shows up a lot in my work right now as a personal practice as well as in my own work. So I completely resonate with what you just shared, that bringing it home, learning what is taught and facilitating and engaging and work in the world in a way that's constantly giving back and opening up more in me while I simultaneously witness opening up with the people I work with. So it feels like a special way to practice togetherness. I like the language around it, the togetherness practice, because the practice, that term just is not so intimidating. It's not, a huge theoretical, uh, jargony term. It's something that we all have experience with that word of what practice means. It means you try it, and or
Yeah,
there's an element of commitment, perhaps, to that word
yeah,
sometimes. Um,
yeah.
Well, great. Just want to check the comments, see if anybody else wanted to share anything. But I mean, I guess we could just sort of wind down the conversation now. Um,
That's great. Yeah. And so, yeah, and just to make a plug for those people who wants to play, plus especially bring this into your immediate relationships. A teenage daughter, a teenage son, a partner. If you feel stuck in any relationship, bring curiosity, go to the website, look at the 90-minute practice. It's very easy to do. Stuck, how to get unstuck practice and try it out. Do it with yourself in a journal and see the places where your own consciousness unfolds. Because at the end of the day, yes, you can use the togetherness practice as leadership development. You can do it for organizational culture change. But at the heart of it, at the essence of it, I believe it is a tool to evolve human consciousness to from where we are to a way of being in the world where kindness and love and trust and connection our practices we live, we be the human beingness of our experience and not just limited to the human doing
yeah.
dimension.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think the practices that are accessible on your website, we can share that after the call.
Correct.
Um, as I just wind down, I guess another thing I wanted to just share is, my own interest in ambiguity is sort of a concept and an experience that maybe is about freedom is one concept I'm playing with a colleague of mine, Anastasia. Uh, m- but I imagine there's quite a bit of ambiguity coming up in the practice because even though there's a framework for understanding what's internal and what's external, it's not as clear as that always. What is in between or when it's a both and perspective, it's not always so black or white. What is actually a capacity or something in the relational field that is internal versus external?
Yeah.
But I don't know. How does that land with you? I know we're we're closing down, but
No, but it's I think, but that's really important. What you're naming is one of the reasons, one of the things that comes in the way of us living into powerful relational fields, because of the deep desire in a lot of human beings to control.
yeah,
Right? But once we recognize that the opposite of control is trust,
yeah,
then we can start practicing trust. And we can start practicing with each other. So Melissa and I, we can have a conversation about something, a body of work we want to do together. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't even know if we'll get the money to do that work. But to bring curiosity and practicing the muscle of trust. And I could tell Melissa, you know what, let's try this right now. I I'm not sure how this work is going to throw out. I don't even know if we are going to drive each other nuts while we do it. But that's the fear I'm bringing to the conversation. How does that land for you? That's the opening.
yeah. The trust, it's paradoxical. Then that becomes actually a different experience of control in life, of like having some kind of firm ground or something to stand on or that's resilient. You used a word, like, was it a biological term for trust? It started with an M.
It's the mycelium.
Yes. Yes. I think.
But it's all what I think it's important to recognize is the thinking mind can't get it, but the feeling sensing heart can, right? We are, we are, we are, we are born. Think about the experience of birth. The first years of life, we had trust in, we were born with it. We were
Yeah.
born with the capacity for it. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, childhood experiences hurt the heart, so the heart shut down. So to protect the heart, we became controlling. We wanted to know. But what we are realizing now is the desire to know, because it gives you certainty in a world that is fundamentally uncertain and changing. So the learn to be comfortable with not knowing, to be learning to be comfortable with uncertainty is a skill to thrive in a fast changing world. But we don't have to do it by ourselves. We can do it in togetherness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would probably say we have to do it togetherness. Like we can't,
Yeah.
there's only so many limitations of trying to do a togetherness practice and healing alone.
Yeah.
Um, well, I just want to say thank you for being willing to try out a Substack live call with me and
Always an
share
adventure.
your work. Well, we'll follow up perhaps with some writing and resources for people
That'll
because
be fun.
I think it would be fun to share that. So,
Amazing.
well, wishing you a wonderful day, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Melissa. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye.